Hello and welcome to this next session as part of the Microsoft Technical Takeoff. This session is covering resiliency inside of Windows 365 and Azure Virtual Desktop. So my name is Tom Hickling. I'm a Principal Product Manager here in the Windows Cloud organization within Microsoft, and I'm joined by my colleague Andre. Now we're going to just cover three main areas where we deliver resiliency into the service, and those are the connectivity platform, the management platform, and then workload resiliency, which basically translates to virtual machines inside of Azure Virtual Desktop or Windows 365. Now, in addition to security, resiliency is absolutely paramount inside of both Microsoft and the Windows Cloud organization. And we are committed to delivering the most reliable and resilient services to our customers, as we know that there are millions of end users using these services every single day. And when we think about resiliency, we deliver this into those three key areas. These are the three areas where we invest to provide resiliency for the overall services of both Windows 365 and Azure Virtual Desktop. Now, the first is the underlying global connectivity platform that ensures that we can connect users around the globe through the best path to their virtual machine in one of the many Azure regions around the globe. Second is the management platform, and this operates all of the administrator and end user capabilities or features that are needed to perform some of the management or configuration tasks related to managing a large estate of cloud PCs or AVD session hosts. And thirdly, we will look at some of the very specific workload resiliency improvements that you can apply to your virtual machines in both of those services. Now, we deliver functionality into these three areas that follow some very specific architectural principles to improve the overall user experience. We operate a global service with millions of users, and that requires us to avoid any single scale bottlenecks so that we can accommodate these users globally as they continue to grow. We also remove any single points of failure that could impact the entire service, whilst at the same time delivering the best user experience at all times, which basically translates to choosing the best network routes, providing the lowest latency for our end users. And we manage and deliver that global scale in a resilient manner for all of the management features and capabilities that provides that resilient foundation. Customer data is also both encrypted in transit and at rest and stored using resilient storage with multiple redundant copies. And we also integrate with additional Azure capabilities or services to provide the next level of resilience for the virtual machines that drive your workloads in both AVD and Windows 365. So let's start off by having a look at the connectivity platform. This is the platform that ensures that we can connect users around the globe through the best path to their virtual machine in one of the many Azure regions around the globe. So we will start small and build out this picture to demonstrate how resiliency is fully implemented through the global platform to maximize the uptime of the service. Now, you are no doubt aware that the connection starts with the Windows app client for Windows 365 and Azure Virtual Desktop. Now, this communicates with Azure Front Door, which is located in over 300 Azure Edge locations around the globe. This is the low latency global entry point to the Windows Cloud. Now, Azure Front Door will always connect to the instance of the Azure Virtual Desktop Gateway service that has the lowest latency to that Azure Front Door location and therefore to the end users. This minimizes the distance to the gateway, as well as reducing the length of the network path that is on the internet, as then the next connection to the session host of the cloud PC is now done on the Microsoft backbone. Now, once connected to the gateway, the session is then brokered by the broker service, and then we will connect the client to the session host or the cloud PC, and the session is established. We also have a second set of infrastructure that supports the UDP transport that we call RDP short path that can be used to further reduce latency, and it itself is a similarly architected resilient service. So this slide is just showing in the simplest forms the main components that are involved in the connectivity path from the client all the way through to the Cloud PC or session host virtual machine. Keep those in mind as we expand this view. So if we expand this view a little bit, it's not just a single instance of each of these services as that previous slide alluded to. This is now a wider diagram that's just been flipped horizontally. Within each region where we enable the connectivity platform, we deploy multiple instances of each of these components or services. We do that firstly for resiliency purposes. Each of these individual units operates independently, and therefore the overall service can accommodate an element of failure without bringing down the entire service. But all of these come together to provide a wider resilient service. And then secondly, it enables us to easily scale out the service to accommodate new usage patterns and new users signing in every day. But this is just one region. We operate this connectivity platform in around 40 Azure regions as of today. So if we extend this further to include a second region, region 2 that you see here on the right, what you can see is that this then enables users to access the connectivity platform through a different set of infrastructure in an additional region in order firstly to provide that lower latency. But also in the event of any type of outage of our service within region 1 for that connectivity infrastructure, new connections to the session host back in region 1 can be directed to the infrastructure in region 2, and so on, such that the user is still able to connect to their VM in the event of any kind of outage affecting our service in region 1. Similarly, a Cloud PC or a session host in region 2 can be served by the connectivity infrastructure in either region 1 or region 2, or any other region that we'll go on to in a second. So each service that you see here, for example, the gateway service, the broker service, is fully resilient within a region, as well as at a global scale across multiple regions. And then just to complete this total picture, previously we just saw 2 regions operating together, but like I said, we operate this connectivity infrastructure in approximately 40 regions around the globe. Now, this is the current global estate that we operate, covering all geographies and many Azure regions. Just remember, in each of these regions, we have multiple instances working together as a truly global service. And we will continue to expand this service into new Azure regions to provide a better service for all of our users around the globe. So we'll just move on to the management platform now. The management platform operates all of the administrator and end user capabilities or features that are needed to perform some of the management or configuration tasks related to managing an estate of Cloud PCs or session host virtual machines. So think of services such as Cloud PC Move, point-in-time restore, the Cloud PC resize feature. These are just examples of customer or admin-driven features. But other services might be part of the actual Windows 365 service, such as our deployment capability, which is completely transparent to customers. Now, this is just a very non-specific feature, just showing some of the typical Azure components that we use to host the feature. And in a similar way to how we manage the connectivity platform, where we distribute our infrastructure to maximize resiliency, here we also distribute our service across multiple availability zones within a region, such that the service is resilient to zonal outages. But again, we also distribute this infrastructure across multiple regions, which further helps to enable the entire service to withstand a total regional outage. And again, like before, just to complete the total picture, this slide just shows that the blue icons here are the locations where you can go and deploy your Cloud PCs, and the grey boxes are the regions that have the management platform running within them. And that's the infrastructure that runs our code, that delivers the capabilities or services into your estate. And just to finish on this topic, we've recently announced some improvements to the Microsoft hosted networking capability. We've introduced a new 3-tier topology, which consists of geography, followed by a region group, which is typically a country, and then individual regions. Now, both the geography and the region groups have multiple regions within them. And the Windows 365 deployment service will deploy your cloud PCs across all of the healthy regions in either of those groups in order to increase your resiliency of your estate of cloud PCs. So we highly recommend that customers, if they're not already, using the Microsoft hosted or the MHN networking option. So let's move on to the final topic, which is workload resiliency. So we're going to look at some of the specific workload resiliency improvements that you can apply on top of the virtual machines in both Azure Virtual Desktop and Windows 365. So I'm going to start just covering off the Azure Virtual Desktop capabilities. Now, the first thing to mention is a public preview feature called regional host pools. Now, this is a new type of host pool, which is very similar to the existing host pools, but we are deploying regional metadata databases, i.e. a database in every single Azure region that we support. Now, this is going to reduce the impact of any single database or Azure region outage, as we've removed any cross-region dependencies. And it also provides a higher level of data residency because you will be able to select more locations to store your host pool metadata. Now, these regional host pools are just surfaced in the deployment by selecting the deployment scope of regional compared to geographical. The second area is availability zones, and we always recommend customers use availability zones when deploying their session hosts. So what are availability zones? Well, each Azure availability zone is just a collection of data centers. In those regions that support availability zones, there is always a minimum of 3 of these availability zones. And each Azure availability zone has its own separate networking and power supply to avoid any single points of failure. Each zone is a minimum distance of 16 kilometers from all the other zones, so local issues should not impact more than one zone. And then each data center inside of a zone has a maximum distance of 40 kilometers from all of the others, so that latency is not increased. The physical network latency within an Azure availability zone, i.e. across the data centers, is capped at 0.4 microseconds. And the physical network latency across availability zones within a region is capped at 1.2 microseconds. And we very simplistically surface the ability to choose availability zones in the deployment. So you can go to the availability zone dropdown and select all 3 of those availability zones, and we will then distribute your session hosts across all of those 3 availability zones. What that means is if there's ever a zonal outage, you will only lose connectivity to 1/3 of your session hosts in your host pool, as opposed to what might have been 100% of them. Now, it's always good to remember that availability zones are not a disaster recovery capability, but a blast radius reduction capability. So in addition to availability zones, Azure Site Recovery is a separate Azure native service that allows you to protect your specific infrastructure. It allows you to create automation actions that first protect your VMs, for example, by replicating the disks to an alternate region. It can also enable you to then create automated recovery plans that will enable you to fail over from the infrastructure in the failed region to the newly available like-for-like infrastructure in the alternate region. Now, there is a price associated with ASR, but for that price, you get the guarantee that your important infrastructure will be available for you in the event of an outage. So for customers that are concerned about recovering their specific machines, we encourage you to look at Azure Site Recovery. The alternative, however, to recovering specific virtual machines is the ability to just quickly provision brand new virtual machines. And we encourage you to look at things like infrastructure as code services such as Azure DevOps, as well as automation tools that you can use to rapidly deploy new session hosts in alternate regions or availability zones in the event of an outage to get your users working again. Now, this does require you having a base image with all of your base applications in it that you can rapidly use to go and deploy new session hosts. And with that, I'm now going to hand over to my colleague Andre, who's going to cover Windows 365 workload resiliency.
Thank you, Tom, for giving the great overview of Windows Cloud Resiliency. Hey everyone, my name is Andre Radinger. I'm a Senior Product Manager at Windows Cloud Experience team. And now let's move to the third lens, which is business continuity and disaster recovery for Windows 365. This is something we've consistently heard from you. Disaster recovery is a critical requirement for any endpoint strategy. From the very beginning, Windows 365 has included built-in capabilities, and over time, we added optional disaster recovery capabilities to Windows 365. So let's take a look at what options for business continuity and disaster recovery you have today for Windows 365. We'll start with one of the core features here, and that's point-in-time restore. Point-in-time restore has been included from day one as built-in included feature. Point-in-time restore allows you to take Cloud PC back to a specific earlier state. IT admins can configure automatic restore points at regular intervals or create them on demand for individual Cloud PCs. Restores can be done for a single Cloud PC or in bulk across multiple devices using Intune. And if needed, admins can even allow end users to initiate their own restores through Windows app. If a restore is triggered during an outage and the original infrastructure isn't available, Windows 365 automatically relocates the recovered Cloud PC to healthy infrastructure within the same Azure region. There are no extra steps required by admins or users to accomplish that. This ensures a seamless recovery experience even in the middle of a disruption. This seamless restore capability proved its value during, for example, the CrowdStrike incident, when Windows 365 customers were able to quickly and smoothly recover affected Cloud PCs without ever raising tickets or issues to Microsoft. Now, let's move to the next aspect of our resiliency story, cross-region disaster recovery. Cross-region disaster recovery solution is designed for highly regulated industry or customers who require geographic separation between primary and backup environments. This add-on feature creates snapshots of Cloud PCs in customer-defined distant regions. In the event of a regional outage, those snapshots can be used to recover Cloud PCs in an alternate Azure region. This solution helps protect against regional failures, enables faster recovery during major incidents, and gives customers the flexibility to customize recovery plans. That includes integrating them into existing reporting and optional workloads. And finally, there is a Disaster Recovery Plus that goes a step further by enabling more advanced recovery scenarios, including support for critical users and prioritized recovery. It builds on point-in-time restore and cross-region disaster recovery, but adds additional safeguards designed to meet very high business continuity standards. Disaster Recovery Plus is an advanced recovery solution designed for scenarios where downtime and data loss need to be minimized as much as possible. The key difference is that Disaster Recovery Plus includes the pre-allocated resources in a chosen alternate region compared to cross-region disaster recovery. That capacity is reserved ahead of time rather than relying on availability at the moment of an outage. Because of that, Disaster Recovery Plus is designed to deliver a recovery point objective or RPO within 60 minutes and recovery time objective or RTO within 30 minutes during a regional outage. In other words, it significantly reduces both how much data you might lose and how long users are impacted. Together, these capabilities form a comprehensive resilience and recovery story, helping ensure that Windows 365 environments remain secure, available, and recoverable no matter the circumstances. Now, let's take a look at how these Windows 365 resilience capabilities layer on top of each other, depending on how critical the workload is and what level of protection the customer needs. At the foundation, we start with point-in-time restore, which is included in Windows 365. This is the baseline capability that every Cloud PC gets by default. It provides multiple short and long-term restore points and protects against common scenarios like zone infrastructure failures, user or configuration errors, and malware and ransomware events. For the majority of customers, this level of protection is enough. In fact, point-in-time restore alone meets the resilience and recovery requirements for over 80% of our users across industries. It creates both device level and system resiliency without requiring any additional configuration or add-ons. As we move up the funnel, we introduce cross-region disaster recovery. That is a Windows 365 add-on. This capability is designed to address full regional outage scenarios, which go beyond what in-region restore points can handle. With cross-region disaster recovery, the latest restore point is copied to an alternate Azure region selected by administrator. This ensures that data is replicated outside the primary region and that Cloud PC can be recovered even if an entire region becomes unavailable. With point-in-time restore combined with cross-region disaster recovery, that level of protection meets the requirement for approximately 95% of Windows 365 users. And then at the top of the funnel is Windows 365 Disaster Recovery Plus. This option is designed for customers with the highest regulatory business and operational requirements, such as those in finance, government, and healthcare. When customers use point-in-time restore together with cross-region disaster recovery and disaster recovery plus, the solution meets recovery expectations for more than 99% of users. So Windows 365 provides a progressive resiliency models. Customers can start with built-in capabilities and then layer an additional protection as their needs increase without being forced into one-size-fits-all approach. All capabilities mentioned here are generally available to all customers today. A couple more words on point-in-time restore. As I mentioned, we keep short and long-term snapshots. You can take up to 10 restore points and have them taken every 4, 6, 8, 12, 16, or 24 hours, configurable by admin in Intune. In addition, the service also takes additional 4 restore points every 7 days. Each one of these 14 snapshots can be used to restore Cloud PC individually or multiple Cloud PCs via bulk actions. Now, let me show you the demo of configuring optional disaster recovery in Intune, which is a cross-region disaster recovery and disaster recovery plus. Before we can use optional disaster recovery in case of outage, we have to configure it in Intune. To do that, go to Devices, Windows 365, select Settings, and create new user setting. In user settings, we give it a name, demo DR, and we select optional business continuity disaster recovery settings option here. Now, once it opens, we have to select which optional disaster recovery we are configuring. Is it disaster recovery plus or cross-region disaster recovery? So let us select cross-region disaster recovery for this demo. Then you select the network type. Basically, the parameters you have to select after that are traditional parameters as you would select for provisioning policy, Microsoft hosted network or Azure network connection. I'm going to keep a MHN here, and then you have to select geography. So let's say I want to use US East as my backup region, as my backup geography, and as a backup region, you can select one from the list, or you can keep automatic, which is our recommendation. In the next step, you will select groups of users that will be added to this user setting. And once you select groups, all users in these groups that have a valid and assigned cross-region disaster recovery license will be impacted with this user setting and ready to use cross-region disaster recovery in the backup region selected here in case of disaster when disaster recovery is activated. When I click next, I will see the recap of all my selections. And at that point, I will create my user setting, which will take effect immediately and getting my devices ready within 24 hours for disaster recovery in a backup region. So that was all about Windows Cloud Resiliency. On behalf of myself and Tom, thank you for joining us. I hope you learned something, and I hope you have a great rest of the day. Thank you.